let's head on down. All right, welcome back to match 1 of MTGO Masters Week 10. Ben Wheeler on the bottom with the Charbelcher Doomsday-esque deck, and Andreas Petersen on the top with Sultai Crabvine. Looking at these hands, Martin, how are you feeling about what's going on?
Wow, Andreas has double crab, the water grave to play it on turn 1, and then play a fetch land, crack it, get another land drop, and mill a bunch of cards. So he has pretty much exactly what his deck is looking for. He would like to have a Flare of Denial in his hand to kind of stop Ben from, doing all these crazy things this deck is capable of doing and stop his combo later on. But I think Andreas is still going to be pretty happy with that opening hand, even without the Flare.
I have to agree. And yeah, this is an interesting thing where kind of Ben's deck is really good, right? Of killing on turn 4 no matter what. So Andres needs a hand like this. And like you mentioned, you would love to have a Flare, but when you have so much speed like this hand provides, probably just have to go for it. As we do see the second Hedron Crab into the battlefield, we're probably going to see a targeting of ourselves and try and get those powerful graveyard synergies online.
I thought actually the selected memory cost 3. So how does this deck actually win on turn 3? On turn 4?
I also thought it cost 3.
Okay.
That is why I thought we could win on turn 4. It's a turn 5 kill deck. Excuse me. Believe it or not, Martin and I aren't super familiar with selective memory.
Yeah. But I think Ben's deck really needs to draw Lotus Bloom. Like that's one of his ways to play the cards ahead of the curve. And without it, he might be a little too slow against what Andreas is doing, especially with double crab on turn 2.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that like a turn 5, I'm gonna like guarantee win if I do my thing. It's a little slow, but it definitely feels that way, especially like you mentioned with this draw. Oh, beats.
Yeah, these decks are certainly not something you see, at a modern tournament every day. I think this maybe more represents what you see if you go to like an FNM or you just want to hang out, play some modern with your friends. You go to the local game store and people just play whatever decks they enjoy playing. So it's cool sometimes seeing not just the tier 1 decks, but something that people consider fun as well, and they just like to play their favorite cards.
Yeah, and I think both these decks are kind of like if you have the right weekend and you play well, I think you really can perform. I talked about how, this past weekend at my local RCQ, which is, a small step up from like a local like FNM type thing. But like I played against this Sultai deck and made the finals against me. And, like there just wasn't a lot of graveyard hate and he kind of had like a very easy day. Now, if he brings that deck next week, people are probably going to have some more graveyard hate. But you can catch your spots with these, and if you spend time mastering these decks, you get really rewarded. Speaking of which, Andres last turn made a great play, not playing the Gravecrawler to try and trigger the Vengevines on this turn. Ended up, drawing Sister Supplier, so could have progressed it forward. But that tight play really potentially paying off here as we get even more cards milled.
Yeah, I have to say I spent way too much time today looking for some cool decks that maybe don't play the One Ring or that are not tier 1. Mm-hmm. And looking at Andreas's deck, if I saw this deck at any point today, I would have 100% snap registered it because it looks fun, it's explosive, it's linear. It doesn't really care what the opponent's playing. And I like to play that kind of magic in modern. I don't like to play defensive decks. I don't like to play decks that take too much time to set up. I just like to put the pressure on the opponent and see if they have the answers.
Yeah, and you're seeing this right now. Ben going into turn 3 has lethal staring him down. Andres just put up an amazing force. And, some of even the top modern decks are going to struggle against something like this, right? If you don't have an answer for those early crabs, game can easily get out of hand. And yeah, we're going to sideboarding real quick here as Benjamin's going to pick up the cards. Anything in particular jumps out to you for these players from their sideboards? It looks like, maybe getting some.
Well, against Andreas, you just want to have anything that deals with the graveyard, Leyline, Crypt, anything like that. I'm not quite sure if Ben has access to any of that. From Andreas' side, I would just be looking for more counter spells, maybe a discard spell. But other than that, I think Andreas has a pretty decent matchup unless Ben is on the play, has the Lotus on turn 1, and Andreas is a slow draw.
Yep. That makes sense to me. And also, I mean, not to get ahead of ourselves, but you've got to be really excited win or lose in our match because you're probably going to get to play one of your decks versus Scapeshift, since Scapeshift is both these players' other decks.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you're kind of happy, it's like, oh, look at this, it's all working out for me. No, but yeah, I don't think there's very much that like these players can do. That's kind of sometimes why you don't see these decks pop up, is like you're very limited in what you can play.
Yeah, and this is what modern, in my opinion, should be about. Modern should be about diversity and a lot of different decks. And uh, at least in the past, that's kind of how it worked. Like sometimes you would show up to a tournament, you would play a deck that nobody really expects, and you would just have a really good chance of doing well. But I do feel like these days the modern Horizon sets have perhaps too big of an impact on the format.
Yeah, it's tough, when you're making cards that are going straight to modern. If you ever miss a little high, it's a lot more impactful than something like standard, where if you miss high and you're designing for that in mind, it's going to have just a less of an impact, right? You're aiming for such a different target. So it is interesting to see. It looks like Ben's actually maybe doing a lot of sideboarding. I saw cards like Brazen Borrower coming in. This might just be a spot where Ben's just trying to get anything to buy a turn. It
Oh
looks like
yeah.
the players
Yeah,
are ready.
absolutely. Yeah, you just need anything that slows Andreas down so you can try to get your turn 4 kill if you have the Lotus, I guess. I
Yeah.
think my approach to this matchup on Ben's side would just be mulliganing into Lotus Bloom uh pretty aggressively. On
Mhm.
7, I would be willing to mulligan down to 6 super aggressively. On 6, I would still uh, be very likely to go to 5 if I don't find the Lotus, because that's pretty much all that matters, right? There's not going to
Mhm.
be all that much interaction if you're not interacting with Andreas' card. If you don't have, the Tormod Secret delay line to mulligan into, then might as well try to mulligan into your own fast kill.
I think that makes sense. I think Ben agrees with you guys. He's mulling down to 5. He's going to end up keeping this 5. It does have, 3 land selective memory. So, maybe a shot. But Andres did keep 7 cards.
Yeah, and Andreas has the flair as well and a bunch of ways to mill himself. So pretty good opening hand for him.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a Ben fan, you're hoping that these, otherworldly gaze do not find any lands. We are just going to see a land in passing. If we find that second one, we're going to be good to go. Ben, another land off the top, but he did want that 4th land. So that's going to be helpful.
Yeah, but does have a turn 5 kill now, right? He
Mhm.
has 4 blue sources. He can play selective memory on turn 4 and set it up so that his last card is either Jace or Oracle. Uh, but he does have to respect Andreas's flare of denial, so it's going to be interesting to seeing how that plays out exactly.
Yeah, this disrupting shoal in Ben's hand might be critical for him to get there, as it might be a way to fight over the flare if we can find the right card. But looks like prized amalgam hit the graveyard along with it. Excuse me, an Arcaviva. To get a little choked up seeing these graveyard decks work.
Yeah, I think you make a great point about the shoal. I would be trying really hard to keep that stupor in my hand if I'm Ben. It's a 3 mana card that I can pitch into the shoal to try to counter the flare when I'm going for the kill.
Mhm.
But let's see if Ben even has the time to go all the way there.
Yeah, and there's Cats the Worldly Gaze. Puts a Vengevine in the graveyard. Finds the second land. So good to go when it comes to that. And yeah, I guess to Merfolk Secret Keeper continue that velocity and just putting everything in the graveyard, hoping to get those synergies online as quick as possible. It's fun. Like you mentioned, like this is sort of like what you remember modern as and you wish modern to be, but it really was this way back, in
Yeah.
like 2017, 2018. If you're like someone who started playing, maybe during the last 2 or 3 years, this might not look anything like modern to you, but there were a lot of tournaments where people would show up with, decks like this or decks like humans, which was weirdly one of the more reactive, pressure decks. And this is just what people would play a lot of, and it's definitely a different experience than what we've experienced the last couple of years.
Yeah, I remember showing up to a Grand Prix with like Abzan tokens. Then like a couple weeks later, we just decided that hey, this red white twin deck looks kind of cool, and we played a deck
Mhm.
with Village Spellringer, I think is the card. It's like a 1/4 that untaps your team.
Oh
You can
yeah.
you can put Twin on it, and that's the Twin combo in the deck. You also had Restoration Angel and Kiki-Jiki, and we had like Wall of Omens in the deck and Lightning Bolt. I'm not really even sure why we played white over blue, but yeah, it was it was a time when you could just play these different decks and you could do well.
Yeah. And speaking of doing well, Ben did find the land, so we're going to be able to have the Shoal plus Sink into Stupor. The problem is the land will bolt us if we're to play it, so we have to play it tapped here. And I don't know if
Yeah,
Ben's going to have the time,
and
unfortunately.
if you have to play the land tapped, then yeah, that's just as bad as playing it untapped and playing the memory and trying to go for the kill, because that would that actually, yeah, that would leave Ben dead on board. So
Yeah,
yeah,
the
it's just
Psychic Frog threatening lethal here. If Andres go for it, Ben can sink into Stupor the Frog to buy a couple turns. Could also do it to the Vengevine. And we're just seeing the pitches here. Psychic Frog doing what it does. Pushing a lot of damage near the end. And I think Flare's now going to wrap this up for another turn 4 kill here for Andres. And that is all she wrote. Even if we disrupting Flare, yeah, even if we could, we'd have nothing left. So congratulations there. Both players not out yet. They still have to win one more match because Andres were 2 for the case of Benjamin. But it's kind of a quick match.